Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that cuts through the complexity and gets straight to the knowledge you need.
Today we are taking a deep, critical look at the very complex world of residential condominium buying and selling.
It really is. For so many people, a condo is their first big real estate investment. But it's a transaction that is just filled with specific risks.
And shared liability, that's the part people miss. It's fundamentally different from buying a detached home.
That difference is exactly what we're digging into. When you buy a standalone house, you own the building, the land, and your risk is, well, it's pretty much just your mortgage and upkeep.
Your own upkeep, exactly. In a condo, you're buying into a shared enterprise. You're buying into a corporation.
And your financial life suddenly becomes completely tangled up with the decisions of, hundreds of other owners.
It's a huge shift in mindset.
Absolutely. So our mission today is synthesis. We are taking the super technical material that real estate professionals use, the stuff they need to know to stay compliant, and we're translating it for you, the learner.
We want to arm you with the knowledge to spot the red flags instantly.
Yes. And to assess the true financial health of a building, to evaluate a unit's long-term value quickly and, thoroughly. We're trying to make all these complex financial and legal things simple.
With clear, practical examples, we'll be showing you exactly why certain documents matter more than others.
And how some, obscure financial figure, a little line item in a budget, can directly determine whether you qualify for a mortgage.
Or whether you're about to face an immediate, unplanned bill for thousands and thousands of dollars.
Okay, so let's unpack this. What makes selling or buying a condo unit so radically different from dealing with a detached home?
It all comes down to shared ownership and shared risk.
Right, you own the space inside your unit, the paint on the walls, as they say.
But you're a part owner of the entire building. The roof, the foundation, the elevators, the parking lot.
The heating systems, the land it sits on, all of it. And you share the financial burden for maintaining it, insuring it, and eventually replacing all of it.
And that shared financial burden, that's the most immediate and impactful difference. It starts with the one recurring cost every single owner has to pay, the maintenance fee.
So let's start there. Part one, the financial health check. Decoding those maintenance fees and the all-important reserve fund.
The lifeblood, as you called it.
So maintenance fees are common expenses in legal terms. They are the lifeblood of the condominium corporation.
They're mandatory, and they really define your quality of life in that building.
A buyer has to go beyond just the dollar amount, right? You need to understand exactly what's covered.
And maybe more importantly, what is not covered.
So what's in the bucket?
The scope is.
Yeah.
It's just staggering. It covers all the operational costs, everything required to run the building day to day.
Like utilities.
Big ones. Essential utilities, electricity, gas, hydro, not just for the common areas like the hallways and the lobby, but often bulk purchased for the individual units too.
So if your fees include hydro or heating, that's a huge factor in your overall housing cost calculation. You need to know that.
A massive factor. And then beyond utilities, you've got the human element and security. This is often where you see the biggest cost differences between buildings.
I can imagine.
Yeah, labor and management are huge components. So we're talking about the cost for the superintendent, the property manager, who handles the day-to-day.
The paperwork, the complaints.
All of it. And all the contract labor for landscaping, snow removal, cleaning, general repairs. Then you add the security infrastructure.
Right. The guards, the concierge.
Exactly. 24/7 security, concierge service, video monitoring systems, keycard access control, and making sure all the fire and life safety equipment is maintained and certified.
So if a building sells itself as luxury, you're paying for that luxury every single month.
Directly. Those operational costs are reflected right there in the monthly fees.
Okay, that brings up a really critical point, which is protection. Insurance. The fees aren't just for convenience, they fund mandatory insurance.
Yes, and this is what protects everyone. The fees must cover 3 statutory types of insurance mandated under the Act.
What's the first one?
First is property insurance. This covers damage to the units and the common elements themselves, from, standard perils like fire, pipe bursts, or flooding.
But this is the master policy for the building, not for my stuff inside my unit.
Crucially, yes. You, as the owner, need separate coverage for your personal contents and any upgrades you've made inside your unit.
So the corporation covers the basic structure, but my policy covers my furniture, my clothes, and if I put in, fancy new countertops.
Exactly right. Second is general liability insurance. This protects the corporation if someone gets hurt on the property.
Like if someone slips on an icy sidewalk out front.
Perfect example.
Mm.
Or is injured in the lobby.
Mm.
And third, and this is essential, is directors and officers liability insurance, D&O,
Why is that one so important?
because it protects the unpaid volunteer board members from personal liability for the decisions they make.
So they're not going to get sued personally for signing a bad contract.
Exactly. It protects them for decisions on financial management or contract approvals. A well-managed corporation will have comprehensive D&O coverage. It gives everyone confidence in the governance.
That makes total sense. Okay, so how is my fee calculated? My specific fee. If I have a 2-bedroom and my neighbor has a 1-bedroom, how do they figure out my exact monthly share?
It's based entirely on the owner's proportional share of the corporation.
Proportional share.
It's a fixed percentage. It's all calculated and laid out in the original declaration documents when the condo was first built.
And the math is pretty simple.
The basic calculation is, you take the corporation's total annual budget, multiply it by your unit's proportional percentage share, and then just divide that by 12. And that's your monthly fee.
And the size of the unit is usually the main driver for that percentage, I assume.
Precisely. A 1,000 square foot unit is going to have a higher proportional share and a higher monthly fee than a 500 square foot unit in the same building.
But it's not just the inside space, is it?
No, and this is where it gets tricky for buyers. It depends entirely on what the declaration says is part of the unit.
Right. The difference between owning something and just having the right to use it.
Exactly. Let's talk about a parking space. If the declaration says that parking spot is held on title, meaning it's deeded to you, you own it, that area is often added into your overall proportional share.
So it affects your fees.
It affects your fees and your liability. But if the parking spot is just an exclusive use common element.
Meaning the corporation owns it, but only I can use it.
Correct. In that case, it may or may not impact your proportional share. It depends on the specific wording in the declaration.
But it'll definitely impact the unit's market value.
Oh, for sure. This is why you have to verify all the listing info.
Huh.
The legal status of that parking spot defines not just your fee, but your long-term liability for that space.
So the maintenance fee is for the routine day-to-day stuff. But if the whole building suddenly needs a new, say, $10 million roof, those routine fees aren't going to cover it.
No way. And that's where the reserve fund comes in.
This feels like the most important part.
It is the single most important distinction a buyer has to grasp. It's the most critical measure of a building's long-term financial stability.
So the reserve fund is specifically for what?
It is solely for major repair and replacement of common elements and assets, things that have a lifespan longer than just 1 year.
Give us the big examples. What kind of projects are we talking about?
We're talking capital projects.
Yeah.
Replacing the entire roofing membrane, a complete overhaul or replacement of all the elevators, which is a multi-million-dollar expense.
Wow.
Major structural repairs to the underground parking garage. That's a huge one, often due to water getting in and the concrete deteriorating.
Or the big mechanical systems like the boilers.
Exactly, the central heating, boilers, and chillers. The reserve fund is the collective savings account for the building's entire expected lifespan. It ensures the physical infrastructure can actually be renewed when it needs to be.
And this isn't optional. It's legally mandated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All condominium corporations have to have one. And the funds, which are collected through those monthly maintenance fees, have to be segregated. They must be in a separate bank account.
They can't be mixed with the operating budget.
Never. That separation is key to financial integrity.
But making sure that fund is, healthy enough. That isn't just guesswork. The law requires the reserve fund study, the RFS.
The RFS is arguably the most important document you can look at, outside of the status certificate itself.
And how often do they have to do one?
It's required at least every 3 years, or within the first year for a brand new condo.
And it has to be done by an independent expert, right?
Yes, a qualified specialist, usually a professional engineer or an appraiser with an ACI designation. And the critical part is, this expert must be unaffiliated with the current board or management
For objectivity.
to ensure complete objectivity.
So let's pull back the curtain on this study. What does the specialist actually do to figure out how much money is needed?
So the study basically breaks the entire building down into its major components: roof, cladding, elevators, paving, pool equipment, you name it.
And they estimate 2 things for each part.
Correct. Its useful life expectancy and the projected cost of its replacement down the road. These projections are then organized into financial schedules, usually spanning 30 years or more.
Okay, so let's use an example. The study finds the elevators have maybe 7 years of life left in them, and the estimated replacement cost in year 7 is, let's say, $6 million. What happens then?
The RFS calculates the required annual contribution needed now, today, factoring in inflation and expected returns on the money in the fund to make sure that $6 million is available when that expense hits.
And this is all laid out in the study.
Yes, the RFS provides a physical analysis, which details all the components and timelines, and a financial analysis, which details the current funding versus what's required.
And there's one part that's most critical.
Schedule C. It's the most critical. It plots the predicted balance of the reserve fund over the next 3 decades. It shows you if it ever dips into the negative.
Which is a massive red flag.
A huge red flag. If that Schedule C shows a massive projected deficit in 10 years, the corporation is legally required to raise fees or levy an assessment to fix that funding gap now.
Which brings us to the danger zone for any buyer, the special assessment.
This is what everyone is afraid of. If, due to poor planning or deferred maintenance, or just a sudden catastrophic event, a major repair cost exceeds what's in the reserve fund, the board can implement a special assessment.
And this is not a small fee increase. This is an additional, often very large lump sum payment required from every single unit owner.
Sometimes due in 30 or 60 days, it can be a real shock.
And this is where that proportional share calculation from earlier comes back to haunt you.
Exactly. The amount you owe is based on that same percentage. So if a $5 million assessment is levied and your proportional share is 0.5%, you owe $25,000 immediately.
So if a potential buyer looks at the status certificate and sees the reserve fund is weak, or worse, there's already an assessment announced.
The effective price of that unit just skyrocketed overnight, and that seriously impacts their ability to get financing.
It does, but beyond the immediate financial hit, there's a real legal risk here too, right? The lien-in.
Special assessments are collectible in the exact same way as regular maintenance fees. So if an owner fails to pay their share,
Or even just falls way behind on their regular fees.
the condominium corporation can place a lien against the unit, and they can do it within 90 days.
And that lien is a charge against the title. It has to be cleared before the unit can be sold or refinanced.
That's right. The failure to pay a few $100s in fees, or to pay that big assessment, it risks the entire property.
That is a severe consequence.
It really is. I mean, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the reserve fund is the collective savings account for the building's entire life cycle.
If it's healthy, the building is stable.
Financially stable, units are easier to sell, lenders are confident. If it's poorly funded, every owner risks a massive, unplanned bill that can be levied very quickly by the board. This financial exposure is exactly why due diligence on that reserve fund is absolutely non-negotiable.
Okay, we've established that the corporation's internal finances are the #1 hidden risk. But those financial realities, they always manifest fiscally, don't they?
They always do. Poor financial planning means poor physical upkeep.
So moving on, let's talk about what a buyer actually sees and what they should be looking for when they're assessing the physical health of the shared property.
When you're buying a condo, you're not just inspecting the unit. You are conducting a physical inspection of the entire building. The condition of the common elements is a critical, visible indicator of how well that property is managed and funded.
So poor condition suggests deferred maintenance.
Almost always. And deferred maintenance inevitably means future high costs and potential special assessments.
So a buyer needs to become a bit of a detective when they tour the building. What's on the checklist? What tells the true story of the management?
You start inside, in the public spaces. They're a proxy for the entire operation. So assess the interior common elements. Is the lobby clean and modern, or does it look dated and neglected?
And the hallways.
Are the corridors clean, well-lit, odor-free? Look closely at the carpet. Is it worn, stained, or visibly patched? Are there missing light bulbs in the fixtures? Little things like that suggest a low attention to detail.
The functional parts of the building are even more important. Like the elevators. I know those are a huge replacement cost.
They are. Check them. Are they functional, clean, well-maintained? Or are there frequent out-of-service signs or visible wear and tear?
What about the amenities?
If there's a gym, a pool, party room, check their age and working order. Are they attractive and used, or just clearly neglected?
And you mentioned the parking structure is the Achilles heel of many aging high-rises.
That's a major red flag zone. In the underground parking, you have to look critically for signs of structural issues.
Like what?
Standing water, active ceiling drips, oil stains, or that white mineral deposit, it's called efflorescence, on the concrete ceiling.
And worse.
Even more critically, look for spalling. That's where the concrete chips away and exposes the reinforcing rebar inside.
That sounds bad.
It is. Those are the telltale signs of water ingress and corrosion. It suggests costly, major structural repairs are coming, and those repairs are almost always funded by the reserve fund, or worse, by a special assessment.
And on the outside, what should scream future assessment to a buyer from the exterior?
Check the exterior walls for deferred maintenance. Large cracks, signs of corrosion on metal parts, deep water stains under windows or balconies.
Balconies themselves are a big one.
Huge. The railings should be rust-free and secure. Check the condition of the balcony slabs themselves. Are they heavily cracked or breaking up? Even the grounds.
The landscaping, sidewalks.
Roads, sidewalks, landscaping, snow removal. They're all indicators. If you see visible, chronic signs of deferred maintenance, you can be almost certain the reserve fund study contains bad news.
Okay, so another factor that influences a building's stability is the ratio of renters to owners. This is a crucial distinction that lenders really scrutinize.
They do. And buildings with a higher ratio of owner-occupiers are overwhelmingly preferred by both buyers and lenders. They typically command a price premium.
And the logic is pretty straightforward.
It's robust. Owners have a greater personal and financial stake in the building's management, its cleanliness, and its long-term health. They vote, they go to meetings, they care about resale value.
So while there's nothing wrong with renting, a high proportion of tenants can lead to some issues.
It can. Tenants are often more transient and might not have the same commitment to upkeep or following the corporation's rules on noise, garbage, cleanliness.
So a high tenant ratio is a warning sign.
A ratio of 25% or higher of tenant-occupied units could be a warning sign, yeah. It could indicate potential degradation, left community cohesion, and importantly, difficulty for new buyers getting a mortgage.
Especially high ratio mortgages.
Exactly. They're more sensitive to that perceived risk.
And the type of tenancy matters a lot too, right? We're not just talking about long-term renters.
No, the rise of short-term rental platforms like Airbnb is a major issue for condo corporations.
I can imagine.
Transient daily rentals are generally highly undesirable. There's constant turnover, security risks, disruption to permanent residents.
So most buildings try to restrict them.
Many declarations specifically prohibit or restrict short-term rentals. They'll use language like solely for single-family residential use, or they'll restrict leases to a minimum of 6 months to get rid of that transient issue.
This next section is absolutely critical for a buyer. We've all heard horror stories where the previous owner made unauthorized changes, and that liability falls squarely on the new buyer.
That's the most important legal takeaway here. Alterations fall into 2 general categories, and both require serious due diligence. First, alterations inside the unit.
Like a kitchen reno.
Kitchen or bathroom renovations, changing flooring, things like that.
And even interior changes can be regulated by the board.
Oh, yes. Especially if they impact sound or structural elements. For instance, the corporation might have rules requiring a specific soundproofing underlayment for floors.
So you can't just put down any old hardwood.
No. They might mandate floating engineered hardwood to control noise to the unit below. And if the previous owner ignored that, the board can order the new owner to rip it out and replace it properly.
At the new owner's expense.
At their own expense.
And the second, more legally complex category is changes to the exclusive use common elements.
This is governed by Section 98 of the Condominium Act. We're talking about spaces like balconies, decks, or private patios.
So if I want to put up an awning on my balcony.
Any alteration like that, a
Yeah.
permanent awning, installing custom flooring on the balcony slab, a complex satellite dish, it requires explicit board permission.
And why is that approval process so formal?
Because the corporation still owns the structure. They own the balcony slab, the exterior wall. You just have exclusive use.
So it's about liability.
To manage liability and standards, the board enters into a formal Section 98 agreement with the owner. This agreement then has to be registered on title for the unit.
And the registration is the crucial step.
It's what makes the agreement binding on all future owners.
Let's use a hypothetical here. A seller added an unapproved, fancy custom enclosure to their balcony. I buy the unit thinking I get to keep this great enclosure. What happens?
You inherit the problem. If a seller made unauthorized changes and the board demands its removal, you, the new buyer, may be required to restore everything to its original state
At your own expense.
at your own expense. We've seen restoration bills in the tens of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
This is why the buyer salesperson has to diligently seek out documentation of board approval for any alteration, and why the lawyer has to search the title for that registered Section 98 agreement.
Let's quickly address a source of huge confusion. Unit size measurements. Buyers see different numbers, and it can be really misleading.
The key distinction is between unit square footage and total living area.
And they're not the same thing.
Not at all. Unit square footage is the measurement inside the unit, the actual space you have legal title to. Total living area is a broader, often misleading number that includes things like balconies, lockers, and parking spaces.
And professional standards say you should only be listing the unit square footage.
That is correct. Lumping in the balcony is just inaccurate marketing. Quoting the total living area as the main square footage inflates the perceived value.
And there's a standard for how to measure it.
Yes, especially in high-rises. You measure from the innermost unfinished surface of the walls and from the unfinished surface of the floor slab to the unfinished surface of the ceiling slab.
So slab to slab, wall to wall, you ignore the finishes like paint and drywall.
Exactly. This technical detail matters because square footage directly impacts valuation. You're comparing two units and one is listed with the balcony included in the size. The comparison is flawed. You could grossly overpay.
Okay, so we've talked about the internal finances and the physical risks, but all of these facts, the good, the bad, and the ugly, have to be certified and disclosed.
Which leads us directly to the status certificate. This is where the financial and physical realities collide with legal authority.
This sounds like the most important document in the whole process.
It is, without exaggeration, the single most crucial document in a condominium resale. It's not optional. It's a statutory form required by the Act that provides critical, legally mandated information about the unit and the corporation as a whole.
So how do you get it, and what are the timelines?
The corporation has to provide the certificate within a very strict timeline, 10 calendar days of receiving a written request and payment.
And the fee is capped.
The maximum fee is currently $100, including taxes. This rapid deadline shows how urgent and important the document is.
What gives this document its legal weight? Why can't I just trust the seller when they say their fees are paid up?
Because the status certificate is essentially a legal warranty by the corporation about the unit's status on the day it's issued.
And its contents are comprehensive.
A full snapshot. It confirms the exact maintenance fees, whether the unit has any arrears, and if there are any current or planned special assessments.
It also covers legal issues.
Yes, it discloses any pending legal actions involving the corporation, like a lawsuit against the builder, and it gives you the financial vitals. The most recent reserve fund study summary, the current budget, and recent audited financial statements.
And the rules.
The declaration, bylaws, and rules like pet restrictions, and the occupancy data, confirming that tenant-to-owner ratio we talked about.
So if the certificate shows the unit is in arrears, that debt transfers to me, the new owner.
The arrears follow the unit, not the owner. If the seller owes $5,000 in past fees, the buyer has to make sure that money is paid from the closing funds, or the corporation will come after them.
Given how critical this is, how do you legally protect the buyer in the purchase process?
The agreement of purchase and sale must include a clause that makes the whole deal conditional.
Conditional on what?
Conditional upon the satisfactory review and approval of the status certificate and all its attachments by the buyer's lawyer. This is a non-negotiable step.
Okay, but what if the corporation is slow and misses that 10-day deadline? Does the deal just fall apart?
No, and this is a key point of buyer protection built right into the law. The deemed certificate clause.
The what?
The deemed certificate clause. If the corporation fails to provide the certificate in those 10 days, the law deems it to state two incredibly important things.
Okay.
First, that the unit has no arrears, and second, that no increases to common expenses or special assessments have been levied since the last budget.
That's powerful. So if they're late, the law gives the buyer a clean bill of health protecting them.
Exactly. It forces the corporation to comply with the timeline or risk losing the ability to collect those debts from the new owner. It's a mechanism to promote speedy disclosure.
Now, let's talk about expertise. The salesperson gets the document, but they shouldn't be the one analyzing it, right?
That's a requirement of professional competency. A salesperson generally lacks the specialized expertise to analyze a 30-year reserve fund study projection or assess the legal ramifications of a pending lawsuit listed on the certificate. The stakes are just too high.
So the salesperson must advise the buyer to get professional help.
Correct. They have to refer the client to qualified professionals, a lawyer for the legal review, and maybe an accountant or an engineer if the financials or the RFS reveal something particularly alarming.
So failing to refer them out is a huge liability risk for the salesperson.
A significant professional liability risk. The lawyer's job is to read all that fine print and assess the risk exposure before that condition gets waived.
And it's tempting in a hot market to remove that condition to make your offer look better.
But professional advice says that unless your lawyer has already had a chance to do a full review, that condition has to stay in to protect you from potentially disastrous financial consequences.
Okay, so the health of the corporation, its governance, finances, structure, all of that directly impacts the value of the unit and a buyer's ability to get a mortgage.
Which brings us to how these unique condo factors play out in valuation and mortgage qualification.
Right. So when is an appraisal necessary?
For most transactions involving a mortgage, the lender is going to hire a qualified appraiser to confirm the property's value before they approve the loan.
They need to know the collateral is worth what they're lending.
Exactly. But a condo appraisal is fundamentally different from appraising a house. It's more layered.
How so?
While they do the standard comparative analysis, the condo appraisal has to focus on three critical external factors unique to shared ownership.
Okay, what are they?
First, the competency of the corporation and its directors. An appraiser needs to assess the reputation and track record of the management. Second, the health and adequacy of the reserve fund.
Because if the fund is in trouble, an assessment is coming, which lowers the value.
It depresses the value of the unit, yes. And third, the condition of the common elements. If the roof is clearly failing or the parking garage is crumbling, that future liability translates into lower present value.
So an appraiser isn't just looking at the granite countertops, they're literally scoring the building's management.
Precisely. If the management is known to be fractional or incompetent, the risk profile of that investment goes up. If the finances are shaky, the unit's intrinsic value is lower, no matter how beautiful the inside is.
Okay, so for a seller, pricing strategy starts with a comparative market analysis, or CMA.
Right. The salesperson performs this analysis using recent sales data, looking at current listings, the competition, and analyzing expired listings,
The ones that didn't sell.
which usually indicates they were overpriced. This helps determine a pricing range, though the final list price is always the seller's call.
And a condo CMA has to be way more detailed than one for a freehold property.
It absolutely requires deeper synthesis. A good condo CMA has to analyze and compare factors unique to shared ownership.
Like the maintenance fees.
You have to compare the fee amounts and what they include. A unit with high fees that cover all utilities might actually be a better value than one with low fees, where the owner pays for everything separately.
And the amenities, the condition of the building.
And critically, the ownership status of parking and lockers. Is it owned, assigned, or just rented? An owned parking spot can add tens of thousands to the value.
So if a salesperson just compares a two-bedroom down the street, but ignores a $500 difference in maintenance fees, the CMA is useless.
It creates a massively inaccurate list price. And the sources warn vividly about the consequences of overpricing a condo.
It can be even worse than overpricing a house.
It creates a toxic cycle. It's hard to get other agents excited, you get fewer showings, the property quickly becomes market stale.
And the worst part?
It becomes a comparison condominium. Buyers and their agents only look at your overpriced unit to confirm that the other unit, the one priced correctly, is a much better deal.
You end up helping your competitor sell their place.
Exactly. You help them sell faster and for a higher price.
Speaking of price, a high maintenance fee doesn't just impact marketability. It can stop a buyer from qualifying for a mortgage altogether.
By skewing their gross debt service ratio, or GDS.
This is the critical lender's calculation. It assesses a buyer's ability to handle all their housing costs relative to their gross income.
And lenders generally want to see a GDS ratio below 35% to approve a mortgage.
For a house, it's pretty simple. Mortgage plus property taxes. But for a condo, we have the condo multiplier.
This is where the condo fee hits the affordability calculation. The lender has to factor in 50% of the total monthly maintenance fee as part of the buyer's required annual housing costs.
Only 50%? Why not 100%?
It's a conservative mechanism. It's a regulatory requirement to account for the risk of unknown shortfalls, deferred maintenance, or rapid, unexpected fee increases. It acknowledges that this cost can accelerate really quickly.
Let's use the example from the source to show how this works. A buyer with a gross income of $58,000.
Okay, so their annual mortgage payment is $10,534.44.
Yeah.
Their annual property taxes are $4,120. And their annual maintenance fees are $3,900.
So first, we calculate the total annual housing costs that the lender uses.
Right, so you take the mortgage payment, add the taxes, and then you add the condo fee component, which is $3,900 multiplied by that 50% multiplier. So $1,950.
Okay, so that all adds up to $16,604.44.
Now we divide that total housing cost by the gross annual income. So $16,604.44 divided by $58,000.
And that gives us a GDS ratio of 28.63%.
Which is comfortably below the 35% threshold, so the buyer qualifies.
But the implication is crystal clear. If those annual fees were, say, $7,000 instead of $3,900, their GDS ratio jumps way up.
It could easily push them over the 35% limit, even if their income and mortgage payment were the same. High condo fees can genuinely stop a buyer from getting financing.
When representing a seller, the salesperson's duty goes way beyond just listing the property. They have to provide conscientious and competent service.
Which starts with a meticulous verification of all the details. Exactly. They must verify the unit number, the legal name of the corporation, the current maintenance fee, and what's included.
And crucially, the legal status of the parking and lockers.
Misrepresenting an assigned spot as an owned spot is a major liability risk.
And if the salesperson runs into something that's beyond their expertise,
That's the duty of professional referral. If they lack the knowledge, skills, or judgment to give advice like on complex financials or structural reports, they must advise the client to seek help from qualified professionals.
lawyers, appraisers, engineers.
Home inspectors, insurance brokers. The salesperson is a knowledgeable guide, not an expert in every adjacent field.
Let's go back to those unauthorized alterations, because this really highlights the salesperson's duty to investigate.
The seller's salesperson has a positive duty to investigate and get documentation of board approval for any alterations. They have to ask direct probing questions.
And if they don't, and something is discovered later,
The new buyer may be required to restore the unit. And in that scenario, the salesperson risks massive civil liability for misrepresenting the property and failing to do their due diligence.
so transparency is everything, especially in condos where so much critical information is hidden.
Which brings us to two major disclosure duties. First, material facts. This is information that would affect a reasonable person's decision to buy the property or influence its value.
Give us some concrete examples of what has to be disclosed.
A known, planned special assessment that hasn't been officially levied yet. Severe pet or rental restrictions. Ongoing, significant lawsuits against the corporation.
Or even something external, like a new building going up that will block the view.
Absolutely. If you know about it, you must disclose it in writing. And this also covers stigmatizing issues.
Like what?
Knowledge that the unit was a former grow-op or that a significant event like a death occurred in the unit.
Then we have latent defects, the hidden flaws.
These are often structural and insidious. Foundation issues, chronic water leaks that have just been patched over, a history of fire, inadequate heating or cooling.
And the salesperson has to actively try to find these things out.
They have to take reasonable steps to determine and disclose known material facts and latent defects to every interested buyer in writing and get a written acknowledgement.
That is a massive duty.
It is. Failing to do so carries significant civil liability risk for everyone involved in the transaction.
And finally, let's touch on a key detail for buyers of new or newer condos, the property tax bill.
This is a cash flow shock that happens during the interim occupancy phase.
This is before the building is officially registered.
Right. During this time, the buyer pays an occupancy fee to the builder, which is basically rent. And that fee includes an estimated property tax amount.
But the official tax assessment is often way behind.
Yes. It can be delayed 6 months, a year, or even more. So the buyer has to be told to budget for a potentially large lump sum tax bill when the official assessment finally arrives.
Because the initial amount they paid was just an estimate.
And the actual bill, often covering back taxes for the whole period, can be a significant, unplanned financial outflow.
Okay, that was a truly comprehensive deep dive. Let's crystallize this. If you only remember 3 things, make them these.
First, reserve fund health is non-negotiable. It determines your exposure to future special assessments and is the most reliable measure of the building's long-term financial stability. A weak fund is an immediate liability.
Second, the status certificate is the Bible of the transaction. It's the legally protected snapshot of the building's financial, physical, and legal standing. You must make the sale conditional on its satisfactory review by a lawyer.
And finally, remember the math. Your maintenance fee directly impacts your mortgage qualification via that GDS ratio. That 50% multiplier means high fees can genuinely stop you from getting a loan, no matter what your income is.
And here's where it gets really interesting. We
Oh.
noted earlier that a condominium's value hinges on the competency of the corporation and its directors.
Right. Unlike a house where your financial security is managed by your own decisions, in a condo, your investment's fate is in the hands of an unpaid volunteer board of directors.
Which means that governance quality, the ability of a diverse group of your neighbors to collectively make sound long-term decisions, is the true hidden variable in a condo's value.
The source material even instructs professionals to review the minutes of owners' meetings as part of their assessment.
So the truly well-informed buyer isn't just checking the balance sheet anymore. They need to be reviewing those meeting minutes, not just for financial details.
But to gauge the actual governance quality of their potential neighbors. Do they fight? Do they defer critical maintenance? Are they organized?
Because that collective ability to govern is what ultimately secures or destroys your financial investment.